Was Karen Gravano ordered to poison her father, Sammy the Bull Gravano, with cyanide by the Gambino Crime Family? I'll give my thoughts on this explosive story. Also, did Joey Merlino hurt his reputation as an anti-rat crusader by going on to Vlad TV? And will this interview jam him up with the feds? Hear my thoughts on his performance on Vlad and what's next for Joey. Other stories I'm covering today including gangsters and compassionate release, who gets out and who'll die behind bars. This and many other stories in an active week in the mob genre. Welcome to James Proctor Mob Stories. In this episode of Revelations, we dive into the events that shaped the mob genre of the past week. Stay with us as we unravel the stories, expose the lies and frauds, and give you some perspectives you won't find anywhere else. Like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Now we continue with the rest of our presentation. This week we have a story in Radar Online that involves Karen Gravano, where she makes the outrageous claim that the Gambino family leadership wanted her to take out her own father back in 1991 after Sammy flipped. I'll read part of the story and give you my thoughts on this crazy accusation. So Karen Gravano, the daughter of mobster Salvatore Sammy the Bull Gravano, revealed Gambino crime bosses pressured her to get involved with the killing of her father after he became a witness for the government in a case against mafioso John Gotti. In an explosive new interview, Karen revealed her father had another route he considered taking when the chips began to fall after Sammy turned on the seemingly invincible Gotti to help prosecutors finally put the organized NYC mobster behind bars. Sammy cooperated with the FBI and agreed to testify for the prosecution against Gotti in 1991 after hearing the boss make remarks about him on a wiretap that implicated both of them in several murders. After all hell broke loose, Karen said she feared the worst while appearing on the Dumb Blonde podcast and chatting with Bunny X, RadarOnline.com's Learn. We get to the house and the whole house is surrounded by news media. We go inside and of course my father's people come over and they're like, "We're going to give you cyanide and you're going to take this to your father and you're going to tell him to take himself out," Karen recalled. My father had called. I just started crying. I'm like, "You have to take yourself out. You can't do this," Karen said. I hung the phone up and said, "What did I do?" In exchange for his cooperation with authorities, Sammy was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Gravano later insisted his crimes were just part of what mobsters call the life. Gravano's former FBI handler, George Gabriel, also shared that his revelations brought down more crime brass. "Sammy helped me shut out the rest of the family and the bosses and underbosses of the other families," Gabriel said. "He arguably led to the demise of organized crime in New York." So let's break this down. So Karen Gravano said she came home, and there were groups of reporters around the house, and when she went in the house, leaders of the Gambino family were in the house. So do you think the Gambino leadership would have even been in Gravano's house? So when Sammy flipped, he was put away in Quantico, Virginia at the FBI headquarters, and the FBI was actually watching and protecting the Gravano family, and they would have been watching and would have known who went into their house. As far as Gambino leadership, when John Gotti, Sammy Gravano, and Frank Lacasio were picked up, the Gambinos had a committee running the family, and that consisted of Junior Gotti, Jimmy Brown, Jackie Nose, Louis Valario, and Peter Gotti. The only one of these guys that was close to Gravano was Louis Valario. In fact, he got removed from the committee because the other committee members didn't like the fact that Louis had visited Gravano at MDC. And this happened before Gravano flipped, but the family was still unhappy with Valario at the time. When this incident supposedly happened, Karen was 19 years old. The Mafia definitely wanted to take out Sammy Gravano, and they would have went to extreme lengths to make it happen, but it wouldn't have involved using a 19-year-old daughter of Sammy Gravano. That's just not how the mob works. Women, especially family members, aren't given contracts to take out other mobsters. And I know that neither John Gotti Jr. nor Peter Gotti went to the Gravano house. Jackie Nose was close to John Gotti and would have never stepped foot in the Gravano house. And then as far as Jimmy Brown, that guy operated under the radar, and he would have never allowed himself to be photographed by reporters or the FBI in front of Gravano's house. And so the only possible person that would have visited the Gravanos was Louis Valario, but it didn't happen. Again, the Gravano house was watched and guarded heavily. It just wouldn't have been possible. So my question is, if they wanted to make Sammy take cyanide, why didn't they approach his wife, Deborah? Deborah had found out that Sammy was behind her brother's rub-out, and she would have been the one person that might have been willing to do it. However, the mob typically doesn't use women or family members like that. And now the question is, what about the access to cyanide? It's not impossible, but it's difficult. And it's also interesting that this was never revealed before in Karen's book, Mob Daughter. So why is she doing this? My opinion is it's just to stay relevant. She thinks she's a celebrity because she is on Mob Wives, and I know that she wants to be in another reality show. So I just think that's a way of getting attention. What are your thoughts on Karen Gravano being asked to kill her father? Do you think she's telling the truth, or is it just another lie? Let me know in the comments. Now we go on to Joey Merlino on Vlad TV. Joey Merlino had his big interview with DJ Vlad. Vlad had been releasing segments of the interview each day for the past 2 weeks. And if you remember, I'd made the statement that Joey Merlino going on Vlad made sense because Vlad had nearly 6 million subscribers. Joey's trying to increase his brand recognition, and this will help him gain subscribers to both his YouTube and Patreon channels. And I also said that he wouldn't say anything of substance that would get him jammed up by Vlad. I found the interview interesting. It was obvious he wasn't going to say anything about the life and wouldn't admit to being a crime boss. It was interesting that Joey mentioned that Vlad's team had promised that they wouldn't have any more rats on if they got the interview, but then you had Vlad saying he can't make that promise. And then there was a segment on Tommy Hill that I thought was interesting. And for those who don't know Tommy Hill, he was a rapper, and Joey Merlino had discussed his affiliation with the deceased rapper. And Merlino, who had been in jail when Hill had gained prominence as a rapper, recalled his involvements with Hill's inception into the music industry. Hill had partnerships facilitated by Merlino's network of contacts, including Steve Epstein, whose wife, Linda Creed, was a renowned songwriter. Trouble ensued as Hill, while on the verge of signing with Universal, got involved in a brawl. And then in 2003, Hill turned informant, and then this led to a permanent estrangement from Merlino. And then several years later, Hill was reportedly shot dead in 2011. And this was an incident that Merlino claimed he learned from the paper and knew nothing about. And then you had Joey Merlino criticizing notable mobsters Sammy the Bull Gravano and Michael Francis, suggesting they had altered their lifestyles only once they faced indictments. It was interesting that Merlino estimated that around 98% of mobsters end up cooperating to some degree with authorities after getting arrested. Expressing dissatisfaction towards law enforcement's lenient treatment of informants, Merlino's sentiments are particularly bitter towards Gravano, criticizing his reduced sentence despite involvement in 19 murders. I like that Merlino brought up the Alan Kaiser murder. The only thing I'd like to see people do when they bring this up is to say Alan Kaiser's name instead of a 16-year-old kid. However, I'm pleased they even mentioned it. He also criticized Francis and Gravano's religious conversions following their legal struggles, dismissing them as insincere. And then Merlino called out these mobsters for changing their lifestyles following their engagements with the justice system, stating that in contrast, he's remained the same in spite of being jailed 5 times. He contends that if the mobsters hadn't faced indictments, they'd still be involved in criminal activities. Even Vlad said that he's interviewed probably 100 informants, and he said that they all had an excuse, and this really confirms what we already knew. So what's next for Joey? He's going to continue to do what he can to increase his brand and gain subscribers. He's an entrepreneur, and I personally think he's still looking to have a movie made on his life or a book deal. When you have a big presence on social media, it tells producers and executives that it's worth the risk. He isn't going to change who he is, and he still has a popular following in South Philly. So I expect we'll continue to see Joey doing interviews such as he did with Vlad TV when it makes sense. Let me know your thoughts on the Joey Merlino interview on Vlad. Did you like the interview? Did anything surprise you? Do you feel like it was a mistake for him going on Vlad after seeing the interview? Now on to the gangsters getting compassionate release. We've been covering these stories as they come up. We've covered the upcoming release of the Gemini twins, Joey Testa and Anthony Center, but we also have another gangster that's gotten released. This involves Anthony Donato. He is a member of the Gambino Crime Family, and Jerry Capisi talks about in Gangland News this week. So Anthony Donato, he was close to Vinny Gorgeous and got pinched in 2006 along with Vinny for racketeering. He was found guilty of being a driver in the rub-out of Frank Santoro and got a 25-year sentence. He had filed a compassionate release request and it was heard before Judge Nicholas Garofalus. And Judge Garofalus granted the compassionate release because Donato had served 19 years of the 25-year sentence. He hadn't gotten in any trouble. He also felt that he wasn't going to repeat the criminal behavior. But what I think played even a more important role in this decision was that Donato has a son with Down syndrome, and Donato wants to be there for his son. Garofalus also pointed out that Donato served more time in prison than many of the other co-defendants. I'm particularly familiar with the Donato case because he had filed a couple of appeals where he alleged misconduct by some of the cooperating witnesses. I think it's a good move, and I honestly don't see Donato going back to that life. So what does this mean for Vinnie Gorgeous? As you know, he's serving 2 life bids for racketeering and murder, and he's filed an appeal. Judge Garofalus is the judge involved in that appeal, and although he's allowed both sides to relook at the evidence and provide him with a report, I just don't see Vinnie Gorgeous ever getting out of prison. Maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think we should hold our breath on Vinnie ever getting released. What are your thoughts on Vinnie Baciano getting released? Let me know in the comments below. And then, in addition to the Donato story, we have another gangster who's requesting a compassionate release. This one is Ronnie G. Gialonzo. Ronnie G. was an acting capo for the Bonanno family. His uncle was Vinny Asaro, who passed away last year. In 2018, Ronnie G. was given a 12-year sentence, and as of now, he's served about half his sentence. Ronnie G. suffered several health issues since going to prison, including a heart attack. He suffers from high blood pressure and had a bout with cancer. Ronnie G. is currently 53 years old, and he's serving his time at FCI Allenwood Low, and he's scheduled for release in 2029. So I expect the feds to contest this request, and personally I don't see him getting released. He's still relatively young at 53, and also when he was indicted, the feds were particularly upset with the amount of money he has generated from his loan shark rackets, and then the mansion that he lived in Howard Beach. It seemed the feds were particularly intent in getting Ronnie G. locked up, and being that he's only served 6 years, it's unlikely this compassionate release will be granted. However, we'll continue to cover the story and let you know any updates as they occur. So we have another fraud that's trying to pretend that he's somebody he's not, and this one is so-called man of God from California named Gaetano Castellino. He says that his father is Paul Castellano's brother. And as we know, Paul Castellano only had the one sister, and her name's Catherine, and she's the one who married Carlo Gambino. And so there's no evidence out there of Paul having a brother. And also this guy Gaetano was 5 years old when Paul Castellano was taken out, and he claims to have had this deep relationship with Paul and knew him. I know that the content creator who interviewed Gaetano wasn't happy that I exposed him, but the reason for doing it was not to hurt him or his channel. It's just I'm tired of these frauds coming out. This is like the guy that said he was the illegitimate son of Albert Anastasia. My opinion is that viewers deserve to know if the person they're watching is legitimate or not. Accurate history is important to me, and I think it is for most viewers. I don't know why we have so many people feel they need to make up stories, because with the internet and the availability of information, they won't get away with it for long. And if it wasn't me exposing Gaetano as a fraud, somebody else would have. Okay, let's conclude with what's going on with the channel and what we have coming up next. So we have a lot of cool stuff going on. You know, I really appreciate the great feedback on the shorts I'm putting out. I try and put out 2 to 3 60-second shorts a day. I'm also going to put out a full video twice a week, with plans being one on Tuesday and another on Friday. And then starting in April, you're going to see exclusive interviews I know you'll enjoy. And the plan is to have 2 exclusive interviews a month, and they'll be about 45 to 60 minutes long. The first interview is planned in April, and it's with one of the biggest names in this mob genre. He's a made guy, and he rose to the rank of capo regime, and I'm going to be asking questions never asked before of this guy. I'm waiting to announce his name because we're planning on getting the word out together, and we want to promote it and make it special for everyone. You'll be seeing some rebrand of the channel as well in the next few months. The name of the channel is going to be changed to James Proctor Mob Stories, and so I'll be making these changes throughout the next couple of months. With that said, I want to thank everybody for watching. Please hit the like button. If you're not a subscriber of the channel, please consider doing so. Also check out the community page, as we have an active group with rare photos, polls, and news there. Take care, stay safe, and may God bless you always.